Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congressman Mulvaney, good to see you again.
Senator.
You and I came in the same class in 2011, got to know each other from orientation on, and had the opportunity to be able to serve together in the House for 4 years. I do have to tell you, I was very pleased when I saw the announcement from the Trump administration, your selection, because of what I saw from you in our time serving together in the House. You were a serious student. You looked hard at difficult issues, understood there were difficult decisions that need to be made, and made proposals to do that. You have a fairly decent business background as well, and working with businesses before that, in addition to Georgetown University, graduating with honors in international economics, commerce, finance as an honors scholar, law school at North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and then Harvard Business School. It's not a bad background to be able to walk into this type of role. But as you know, every person that enters into the administration is on the job, and it's on-the-job training. It's an entirely different role. So I'd like to get some background from you just on some key philosophical perspectives that you and I have talked about some as well. But when we talk about regulatory issues and regulatory priorities and how we can fix the regulatory state, Senator Carper brought it up earlier. I can assure you Senator Heitkamp and I would bring it up to you often as we work together on regulatory reform. What do you see as key aspects of regulatory reform?
I think a couple different things, Senator. I think it offers us perhaps the best opportunity to have an immediate impact on getting the economy ramped up even further. There seems to be, in talking with all the folks on this committee and the other committee, a good bit of bipartisan support in this House or in this chamber for regulatory reform, and I've seen some really good academic data that would suggest that the number one thing we could do to boost GDP, to boost economic activity, would be to engage in significant regulatory reform. We also have the advantage of being able to do it rather quickly, not only because there is some bipartisan support for it, but there's certain things that the President can do by himself in a perfectly legitimate exercise of his executive authority. So that the general idea is that regulatory reform offers us probably the best option right now to help get the economy doing even better.
So the grand challenge of this is I could find 50 plus of my colleagues easily in regulatory reform for President Obama. Now I'm going to work with a Republican administration, and I still have the same perspective. We need to do regulatory reform. We need to be able to fix the process of how regulations are done. And I think there will be a greater eagerness from my Democratic colleagues to say, yes, this is a great time to reform the process of regulations. For Senator Heitkamp and I, as we walk through this, we're looking for a partner in the administration that's not just looking at what controls now, but looks towards the future and says for every president and how we do regulations, there should be a predictable, reliable system of that.
Something broke down, Senator, when I meet with a Domino's Pizza or a Papa John's Pizza franchisee. I used to be in the franchise business, and they lay out for me that if they follow the regulations regarding disclosures on caloric intake on their product, that the boards that you see when you walk into a restaurant would be the size of football fields in order to follow the law. When that happens, then something has broken down in the process. Now, granted, we did fix that one, but the simple fact that that got beyond all of the process and actually made it into the real world before someone caught that means that we do have a regulatory process problem that I will look forward to helping you work on.
So you brought up earlier one of the major key reforms would be the cost-benefit analysis. I'd mentioned to you when we visited in the office that my fear is that the cost-benefit analysis from any administration has become a justification because there's a way to be able to find a benefit large enough to be able to say no matter what the cost is on you, I found a benefit large enough that you're going to do this, rather than looking for what is the least expensive, most effective option that's out there. What are some ideas that you have on the cost-benefit side of things to be able to help reform that process?
You know, as I sit here and I contemplate what it would be like at the OMB, should you all confirm me, it would be to go to the President and say, look, here's data, here's real hard data. It may be from this source, it may be from that source, it may be from a variety of sources. In fact, I think we could do a better job of getting information from a variety of sources as we drive these cost-benefit analyses, and then explain to the President what the real-world implication of these regulations would be, not in a justification standpoint, not in terms of shoehorning a regulation that we say we want into a square peg into a round hole, so to speak, but to actually look at the facts and the circumstances of these regulations and allow the President to say, you know what, that one makes sense and those four don't. One thing is I'm very excited about coming in with this administration is that everything the President has talked about on the campaign trail has included regulatory reform. He's included, I think, in his second day full-time in office today or yesterday, he talked about regulatory reform. He made a very high-profile hiring of Carl Icahn to help deal with regulatory reform. You read his books, and you'll actually see chapters about how government regulation is an impediment to growth. So say what you want to about the President, that he has his critics and his supporters, but I'm absolutely convinced that his dedication to fixing the regulatory requirement will work hand in hand with yours.
Okay. We'll work through that process in the days ahead. Obviously, as we work through budget issues, has been a major part of what you've worked on in the House as well. One of the hardest things to get in Washington, D.C. is the real number for anything. How can you help us get the real number coming from the White House and coming from your estimates from OMB?
Well, the first step, obviously, is to get them myself, right? Which is why the Data Act is so important. It's behind schedule, as I understand, as we try and figure out a way to get data that we can actually all use. In this age of big data, the government has all of this data, but it isn't capable of using it because it can't even talk to itself about the numbers. So, of course, one of the keys is to try and figure out a way to fix the system so that the data that we all have access to is the best possible number. And then simply be honest about those numbers with the President and say, look, Mr. President, this is a hard number. This is real. And if we do this, then that will happen. If we do that, then this will happen. And to try and give him the best possible advice I have and the best possible data that I have. But the first step is going to try and figure out a way to allow the government to function properly so that every single one of us in a decision-making position has good information.
Well, I would hope to get that. I would hope that we could also work together on all the budget gimmicks that are out there, whether it be changes in mandatory programs, whether it be multiple other entities that are out there within the budget system that give us fake numbers rather than real numbers, that we can help agree on a set of numbers. I would tell you as well, Senator McCaskill and I have worked for the past couple of years on something called the Taxpayer's Right to Know. We worked extensively with the previous OMB to be able to negotiate a process so that we can deal with duplication and exposing that. I would anticipate that she and I would come back to you pretty quickly as well to be able to help finalize this with you as OMB director as well, so we can deal with the duplication in government. We can't deal with duplication if you can't see it, and it's something she and I have worked extensively on, and we hope that we can get this finished in the days ahead. With that, thank you, Mr. Chairman.